Book of Revelation this evening. We'll be starting in chapter number 17. Revelation, chapter number 17. Recall, we've just finished up chapter 16, where the seven angels have poured out their vials of wrath upon the men of this earth, and especially the kingdom of the Antichrist. Recall the last phrase that we saw was that men blaspheme God because of the plague of the hail. And we looked at the size of the hail. The hail, it says that the hail was the size of the weight of a talent. You think about that. Imagine a hailstone that big falling from heaven and hitting the earth. You can imagine the effects of those stones upon buildings, upon people, upon the ground. Everywhere you would see destruction and chaos. And then all that men can do, instead of repenting, is blaspheme God. You see, they know where the punishment's coming from. They know why they're being punished, yet they would not repent. And that shows the height of depravity, the peak, as it were, of depravity. Men know it's God punishing them, but refuse to acknowledge Him and refuse to repent from their sins. So now, today, we're going to start looking at another person that comes onto the scene. We've seen the beast come onto the scene, and now we're going to see, when we've seen the false prophet, now we're going to look at this new person, and it's called the scarlet-clothed woman. The scarlet-clothed woman, verses 1 through 6. And there came one of the seven angels, which had the seven vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. Now I want you to see that phrase, that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold, and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. When I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. And he gets rebuked for that. Don't marvel at this woman. All right? So he gets rebuked. So now we're going to see like this intervening between Armageddon and these wrath. There's going to come this period and development of this system, and it's going to be what we would call an ecclesiastical system, or that's a fancy way of saying a one world church system. Okay? Now notice that this woman is sitting on a beast, in the phrase, one, the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. Now, what would you take that phrase to mean, that sitteth upon many waters? Right. Now, if you look at this earth, what surrounds almost every continent? Water. So, sitteth upon many waters means her influence will be what? Worldwide. Okay? Worldwide influence. So these two chapters are difficult chapters, but they're not impossible to understand. You just have to remember that it speaks to the mystery Babylon, the mother of harlots. All right? So Babylon is mentioned over in Revelation 14. Let me go there and read that to you. Revelation 14, in verse 8. And there followed another angel saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all the nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. That's the first mention of Babylon. All right, now this is called mystical Babylon. Now, why do we call it mystical? Because it's not yet been revealed. It's a mystery, but it's mystical because we don't know where it's going to be. But there are some strong clues here in the text we've just read that give you a pointer, okay? They give you a pointer as to who Babylon is. Anybody remember where Babylon first started? All right, Tower of Babel in Genesis 10. Make a little note there. The Tower of Babel was a man called Nimrod. He founded that city. And remember, they built that tower, and that's where God scattered them because of her sinful wickedness trying to reach into heaven. So it was started by Nimrod. Since her beginning, Babylon has represented religious heresy and spiritual corruption. Spiritual corruption, religious heresy. All right, now think about this. If you're going to set up a one world church, what are you going to have to do? How are you going to convince people to come in? Think about this. The Roman Catholics have what they call an assimilation program. What they do is, especially in the early years of the founding of this country, the Catholics would come in and assimilate the natives into their worship services by incorporating their traditions and holidays and festivals into theirs, into the churches. And they get them used to coming in, and then gradually they would be absorbed into that system of assimilation. It's the same thing for this assimilation of the world church. It will be a bringing together of all the world religions into one pot. And guess who's going to be at the head of that pot? The false prophet. Okay? He is the one that's going to be the head of that ecclesiastical system. So this Babylon, this harlot, represents the ecclesiastical system of what we would call, some would call a church. I wouldn't call it a church. I would just call it a big mess, okay? Because that's what it's going to end up being. It's not a political system. It's going to be a church and state combo, as it were. Now, this started when, let's see, I don't think I have a chart out, but it started way back when Constantine declared himself to be the first pope. And, you know, all of the Roman Catholics deny that. They say, well, no, Peter was the first pope. Well, you look and see what title that Constantine used. He was the first to use that title, Pontifex Maximus, which is the same word or phrase as the Pope. And he declared himself to be the ruler over both church and state. Okay, now the one thing Constantine did good was that he stopped the persecution of the church. Remember that the Christians refused to cooperate, and the Baptists refused to cooperate. They would not come in. So Constantine developed this policy, and he ended up persecuting the ones that wouldn't come in. They called them heretics. And all throughout the centuries of the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, and on, the Catholics, the Roman Catholics, persecuted those who wouldn't come in, and they called them heretics. But if you look at the picture here, at the clues, you'll see what's going on here. All of the early Christians considered Babylon to be Rome, okay? They considered it to be Rome. Now, why would they think that this church or this one world church will be led by Rome? What would you think? Look at the clues in there and see what you see. So I will show you the judgment of the great whore, with whom the kings of earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me in the wilderness, saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads. And the woman was arrayed in what? Purple and scarlet, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand. All right? Now look at the richness of this woman. Okay, what has she got? Right, purple and scarlet. What's that a symbol of? Royalty. She's decked out in gold and precious stones and pearls, and having great golden cup. Now, where have we seen that golden cup before? You'll see every priest, when they have Mass, they'll come out with this one big cup. Remember that? If you've ever seen a Mass, you'll see it. I call it a mess. If you've ever seen a Mass, you've seen that big golden cup that the priest will come out, and he'll ring a bell, and that cup is supposed to represent the blood of Christ, and they believe that it literally changes into the blood of Christ every time you ring that bell. Okay, that's called the doctrine of transubstantiation, okay, where the bread and the wine turn literally into the body of Christ. All right? So that's that big golden cup, and you'll see what was the thing. Remember the Raiders of the Lost Ark and all those other things? What are they always looking for? That cup of the Last Supper. That's what they called the golden cup. All right? So the idea here is that there are lots of clues that point to Rome, and we can't say without a doubt that it's going to be Rome, but it will be somebody in that Romish system that has, and it could be the Pope. It could be the Pope. And I can't say 100% it's the Pope, but there's a reasonable suspicion there that the Pope will bring in a one church, a one world church. Now, you stop and think about it. Have you ever heard of the World Council of Churches? Anybody heard of that? What is that? That's where all the churches get together and say, well, we're going to do this. And they do it amongst their own members. Now, if you have different denominations in that World Council, what's that tell you? They can pretty much do what they want. They're going to dictate to the other churches what they can do and what they can't do. Now, the thing about assimilation into a place, you'll find out, is it happens with lots of different, what do you call those things, revivals or festivals or whatever they want to call them nowadays, where they'll come to your town and say, oh, we need to put our differences aside and go preach for the Lord. But what they're not telling you is that they're going to get the people that are saved and get them into those specific churches that are sponsoring that church or that meeting. In other words, these crusades and things like that aren't really going to help you in your communities. They're going to take those people away from your communities and say, well, we're going to have you send your money into this place here, or we're going to have you do this or do that. Instead of encouraging them to join the local New Testament church, they encourage them to join their outfit or whatever. And a lot of that goes on, if you stop and think about it. Joyce Meyer does that. All those other televangelists do that. They encourage people to send their money to them, not to the local New Testament church. And that's where the downfall is, and that's the lure and attraction. Oh, we're participating in this great meeting. Oh, the Spirit of God moved, and lots of people went forward. Well, I've found out that's all trickery. That's where all of those ushers are going to be walking down the aisles, and you think, wow, people are moving. We better go. We're going to miss it. And it's just a psychological trick to get you down front and to get you to say a prayer, and then everything's okay. But the problem with that is when you go down front, you're going to see there's a Catholic priest down there. Or you're going to see a nun down there. Or you're going to see this, or you're going to see that down there. And what they want you to do is bow down and let them help you. And next thing you know, where are you at? You're in a Catholic church or whatever. Now, the thing about that is we can spend a lot of time talking about the Catholic faith, and I'm not going to do it for time's sake. But we know that the church at Rome was always considered to be, to the apostles, was always considered to be Babylon because of the emperor coming, Constantine, and all of them coming and taking over this world church, the state church they called it. That's why Baptists, in their principles, if you look at the principles of Baptist faith, they always state a separation between church and state. That's important. A separation between church and state. Why? Because this is the ultimate thing that's going to happen in the tribulation period when the one world church joins forces with the one world government and becomes a church state. Okay? And you're going to find out what happens to that church later on. What happens to that church is it's taken over. It's destroyed and taken over by who? Anybody remember? The Antichrist. Okay? Halfway through the tribulation period, the Antichrist, his headquarters, Babylon, is destroyed in a war. So what happens? He moves into the temple that he allowed to be built. He moves his throne into the Holy of Holies, and he demands to be worshipped as a god. That was his goal anyway, and that's what the goal of the one world church was, is to get everybody in one boat and then force them to come in and worship the Antichrist. And that's what will end up happening when you get into the bed with these other churches. All right? So Rome has always symbolized the wickedness and the depravity and the spiritual fornication to represent the city of Rome. And now John actually says about this mystery that she is pictured as a woman. Now, why is she pictured as a woman? Who is Jezebel pictured as? What do we think of when we think of Jezebel? She represented an idolatrous system, didn't she? She did. Remember, she brought that worship of Baal into Israel when she married the king. Right? So she represents this religious system, or this religious system of idolatry. We see her mentioned over in Revelation chapter 2. And then we also see in chapter number 12, remember we saw Israel represented by a woman that was clothed with the sun, and she had 12 stars about her, etc. We saw Israel was represented by a woman as well. And the true church, what is the true church of Christ represented to be? The bride of Christ. So a woman represents this religious system. So this woman, this harlot, this mystery, Babylon, is a symbol for an apostate religious system. Now I want you to see here in verse 1, she is called a harlot or a whore. All right. And there came one of the seven angels, came and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore. All right. Look at verse 5. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery of Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. All right. Then verse 15. And he saith unto me, The waters which thou sawest where the whore sitteth are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. And then verse 16, The 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. And that shows you the end of the one world church, when the 10 kings are allowed to turn upon and basically take everything she's got and destroy her. So the one world church will be destroyed and made the one world church of the Antichrist in that transition of power. All right? So she sitteth upon many waters. It shows her influence is worldwide. Okay? Worldwide. Now you think about the influence of the Catholics in the early ages when there were still a lot of kings around. who would these Catholics have a big pressure or prestige or power over? You think about it. If you read any kind of history, you'll find out that the popes controlled a lot of these kings and they kept an iron fist about them. Why? Well, all they had to do is threaten these popes with excommunication, and those kings would have to go along with them. So you find out that the Pope and his system had a heavy control in the affairs of politics. And it's always been that way since Constantine, is that the emperor or the Pope had a lot of control over the world politics. And so the kings of the earth have done the same. They've committed adultery with this harlot. In other words, all the kings, all the political powers thought it nice to join in, and they participated with, and they encouraged and helped this harlot accomplish her task. If you go and look about every major city, you'll find a major temple or cathedral, as it were. During those days, you look at some of those cathedrals in books, and you start looking at them. Who had the biggest cathedrals in town? They were supposed to be so-called churches, but they were basically cathedrals to demonstrate the power, the influence, the money, and the prestige of the Pope. Now, they still hold strong sway over American politics. The Catholics still hold strong sway over them. We've had several religious leaders that were presidents that were Catholic, and several that have strong influence in government that are Catholic. Several of them, judges and all of those. And it's not that hard to conceive of all of these political leaders having great influence or great favor for this one world church. They're going to help this harlot accomplish what she wants, and that is to have control over not just the church, but the state as well. And the Antichrist is going to play along with her and help her to accomplish just that. Get everybody lined up, and then, as we read there in verse 16, I kind of give you the rest of the story. The kings turn on her, take everything she's got, and then the Antichrist steps in, sets up his throne, and says, hey, here I am, worship me. And that's what the false prophet will begin to encourage the world to do. So this woman, representing a world ecclesiastical system, is seen sitting on the beast. This means that this religious system will be supported by the Antichrist, okay? This religious system will be supported by the Antichrist. Now notice in verse 4 it says, and the cup tells us, like Jeremiah 51 says, that ancient Babylon corrupted the nations, so shall this mystery Babylon do in her time. She wears a name on her forehead. Look at verse 5. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots. Now think about this. When the Antichrist sets up his world system, where are you going to get that mark of the beast at? Forehead or in your hand? Okay? Forehead or hand. It's either going to be your right hand or your forehead. If you don't have a left hand, it'll be in your forehead. So you can choose whether it's going to be here or here. That tells you that she's cooperating with the Antichrist and his system. She sits upon a scarlet-colored beast. So she represents this world power, this world ecclesiastical system, as being supported by the political system, right? She wears her name on her forehead. Not only is this woman a harlot, she is the mother of harlots. Her corrupt system will give birth to many other corrupt systems. And I can show you the trail of blood over here. Now, in this trail of blood, you'll see that these little dots here represent the true church. Then you see Constantine start the Catholic Church here. Now what happens here in about 869 or so, there was a split in the Catholics between the Greeks and the Roman Catholics. Okay? It comes along here, and then you have the Reformation period. You have the Lutheran Church splits out, the Presbyterian Church, the Congregational Church, the Church of England. All these different splits come out of the Roman Catholic Church. Okay? All of the Methodists, the Roman Catholic, not the Roman Catholics, the Methodists, the Church of England, the Anglicans, the Cumberland, the Disciples, and all of those others came out of this Catholic system. But these dots you see represent the church throughout the ages that came along and never joined in with the Catholic Church. So that's why you hear a lot of people say, well, you're a Protestant. If you're not Catholic, you're Protestant. They did that to us in boot camp. They said, you're either Catholic or you're Protestant. I said, yeah, we protested all right, but we're not Protestant. Protestants came out of the Catholic Church. The Baptists never joined the Catholic Church with Constantine. They never did join. And that's what we want to make that a point of, is that she has incorporated all of these churches into her, and she is the mother of a bunch of different religious systems. All right, and that's another clue as to her identity. All right, John sees this vision, and in great amazement, he is apparently horrified when he sees the end result of this apostate religion. Apostate religion will always lead to doom and destruction, and you'll find that's what happens in chapter 18. Babylon is destroyed. Okay? Now, most people think that the Antichrist headquarters will be there in Rome. It's either Rome or that Babylon city. Now, anybody ever heard of Babylon before being rebuilt by one of those Muslim guys? Not Muslim, but yeah, he's Muslim. Anybody remember Saddam Hussein? Where was he at? Iraq? What happened over there? When they got in there, they began seeing that he was rebuilding the literal city of Babylon. And that's something to think about. He was actually rebuilding that city. The original gates that were at the city of Babylon were brought there and set up there as he built the city. So you think about things like that, and nobody knew that was going on over there, but he was building that city. So you see these visions, John sees all these visions and wonders, but I want you to see something else about her. Notice also that verse 6, it says, and I saw the woman drunken with the what? Blood of the saints. And what's that mean? Drunken with the blood of the saints. She's killing true believers. Right, the blood is on her. She's drinking the blood of the saints and rejoicing over the death of Christians. When you think about that, of all the saints that have been destroyed by the Church of Rome, especially during the Dark Ages, and you'll find in your history books about that much written about the Dark Ages. But in reality, there were millions of people that were crucified, that were slain, that were tortured, that were tormented. If you refused the name of Pope as your leader of the church, you would be killed, tormented, or tortured. You'd be excommunicated. You'd be drug out and quartered, drawn and quartered. Any kind of torment they could come up with, that's what they did to you during the Dark Ages. You had to either swear allegiance to the Pope or you were killed. And that's where you find that in the Spanish Inquisition had a lot to do with that, where the Pope gave that guy authority to begin to influence people to come over to his side. And if you didn't recant your beliefs in Christ and not come over to the Pope, you were killed or tortured, or worse yet, thrown into a prison and kept there till you starved to death. And they did a lot of that during that time. And that's what this is saying. She was drunk in the killing of believers, of Christians. You'll find out that during the 10 emperors' time, that's what they loved to do. And Constantine stopped that and allowed the Christians to actually have freedom again. But at the same time, when he declared himself to be the world leader of the church, he then began to persecute those who didn't come into his church. And you'll find that all throughout the history of the ages, that the Catholic Church has always persecuted the true church, the Baptist faith. Now, they're going to call us heretics for saying that. But they're the ones that are actually heretics because they've been drunken with power, of possessions, of real estate. The Catholic Church holds more property than any other organization in this world. The Catholics have all kinds of land and real estate, property, buildings, all kinds of holdings. And what are they going to use that for? For their one world system. And it won't be hard for them to lead up the head of this system and be called that great Babylonian harlot. All right, we'll stop there and we'll take up with the rest of the chapter, Lord willing, next time. All right, let's all stand.